Hey y'all, welcome back to Ascending with Ashley. I'm Ashley. This is Daily Decolonizing. Today we're doing the Fifth Amendment, okay? Here we go. The Fifth Amendment is grand jury, double jeopardy, self-incrimination, due process, and takings. Alright? Shall we? No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of the grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Okay, it's a lot of words. So what we did was Googled more of this. Okay. So the due process in the Fifth Amendment applies to the means that the government cannot deprive a person of life, liberty, or property without following fair and established legal procedures, essentially guaranteeing a person the right to a notice, a hearing, and an opportunity to be heard before any significant action is taken against them by the government. This applies to I didn't know this. This applies to federal actions only. That's super interesting. I didn't know that. Alright, so a couple of key points. Fundamental fairness. The core principle is that the government must act fairly when taking away someone's life, liberty, or property. We know they don't do that. Procedural protections. This includes providing notice of the proposed action, an opportunity to be heard, or decision-based. And the Fifth Amendment only applies to actions taken by the federal government. That's super interesting. So that means if you don't... Does that mean... So that means you can't, like, plead the Fifth on, like, misdemeanors and, like, local shit? That's interesting. Anyway... pleading the Fifth is something that we hear all the time, especially on like SVU and shit. So for someone facing criminal charges, pleading the Fifth means exercising their right to remain silent and to not incriminate themselves. If you worry about answering questions out of fear that you may be guilty of a crime, you have a legal right to plead the Fifth, right? Like, I'm not going to say anything until my lawyer gets here, right? We've seen it a million times. I only have one prompt for this one. Especially now that we know that it's only for federal. How has social media changed this amendment? How are people self-incriminating all the time on like petty shit, but probably don't even realize because it's either a trend or a joke or whatever? So just think about that. Think about how social media has impacted people's right for the Fifth Amendment. That's the only prompt I have for this. I mean, we could think about, like, why isn't it covered at, like, lower government levels? But again, remember that this was written in the 1700s, so, separate jurisdictions didn't really work the way they do now, right? So I'm wondering if... Hang on. We're decolonizing, so let's get all the questions out. That's their prompt for you, but I have a question for Google. What... My question is, like, what all would federal government be for this, right? Would that include Border Patrol? Like, who all gets... what jurisdictions are included in federal Let's go with federal law. Federal courts have jurisdiction over disputes that arise from the Constitution or federal law. So because everything has changed so much, and I feel like this will probably come out as we look into the 17 amendments after the Bill of Rights, right after the initial 10 that were signed with the Constitution. But I think one of the things that I learned when I went to the border was how the Border Patrol, sheriffs, and local police all worked together in the same, with the same goal. And I thought that that was really interesting because I didn't realize before that point, and I think, you know, this was a while ago, it was like 10 years ago, but I think that that's not something that people really think about, right, is how militarized our country has become, right? I mean, especially for folks who aren't impacted, right, as much as others, right? So like people who aren't in urban landscapes, people who don't have black or brown skin, people who are, you know, more wealthy, whatever privileges people have. I just think it's an interesting way to think. So if it's only federal government, I mean, can local law enforcement, I don't know I don't know how it works, especially with the other. Okay, I gotta let you go.